Hello there. Here we are once again with a new streak I've been exploiting lately. You must have presumed I am a Star Wars fan. In fact, I saw the first movie back in 1977 in the theater, and it left me with a life-lasting impression. I was just 6 years old, but I had already a certain degree of cinema culture, and especially sci-fi and fantasy movies. Up to that moment, sci-fi ships and craft were too clean and phony, and for the first time, Star Wars, through a realistic approach presenting used ships which were weathered and loaded with grime. The effect was astonishing. It looked real for the first time. Well, as you see in the picture, the Star Wars Vintage Hasbro series look quite cool and they have a moderate weathering. However, I wanted to go for a proper weathering and remove the toyish appearance. I didn't want to repaint it, I just wanted an uncomplicated, cool enough look. There are many fans who collect this stuff, and not all of them have the knowledge of how to weather it. Sometimes they complain about the lack of quality weathering of this series, and they pay a lot of money when Hasbro issues versions, like this one, that have a moderate weathering treatment. Well, this model has some elemental weathering, blaster marks, and some carbonite stains on the engines, but it lacks a fundamental thing in weathering. It lacks the elemental wash treatment. This video is dedicated to those Star Wars fans who don't have a clue about modeling and want to give it a try. I'm going to give you the basic formula passed by our revered friend and master modeler Hamilcar Barkas. In order to make your own wash, you just need lighter gasoline that you can get at any tobacconist for less than €4, and dilute a tiny fraction of black oil painting in a jar. I'm leaving a link to one of Hamilcar tutorial videos. Okay, step number 1. First, we have sprayed the ship with a gloss or semi-gloss varnish. I use satin varnish by Mick. You'll find 1,000 brands on any scale modeling shops or websites. But if you don't use varnish, the wash treatment simply is not going to work. Don't even try it without it. Then we apply the varnish, we let it dry for a couple of hours, and with a relatively big brush, we apply the gasoline mixture. If it's getting too dark, it means you used too much oil. Okay, so you need just a little tiny bit. Don't worry if you have stained the ship as if it were a chimney sweeper, because we will have time to remove the excess with clean gasoline or benzene, petrol, or however you call it, with a clean brush. The aim is to remove almost all the oil paint and letting pigments adhere to recesses, panels, and details. Flat surfaces should remain almost clean. The process can always be corrected within 24 hours. After that time, the old pigments are going to get fixed, and it's harder to remove them. If you feel that it looks right, let it dry for that period of time and spray it again with varnish. For that period of time, I mean 1 day, okay? And then spray it again with varnish, and there you have it. If you're happy with it, you can stop after step 1. Your ship is going to look way cooler than it did out of the box. If you don't want further complications, there you have it. However, if you take step 2, you're going to get bitten by the modeler's bug. You will want more and more, and you'll be having a new hobby addiction. Do you dare going for step number 2? There we go. Step 2. Let's work with acrylics. They can be bought at the model shops and they are ready to use in these little bottles. There are endless brands, but from step 2 onwards, you're going to start spending a little bit more than $4. I've used this anthracite bottle and a small brush to depict some tear and wear scratches on the cockpit angles. Those details are going to add further realism. You don't need to be Picasso to make a good job out of it. There is something else you can do. All these details you can see in a grayish white tone are acrylics as well. I have used gray and white tones, and they have been applied with an old technique called dry brushing. With a big flat brush, you have to dab the protruding surfaces only after having previously removed the excess of paint in the brush on a paper tissue. Once the brush is almost dry, then you attack those surfaces. You just want a superficial decoloration. You don't need to be precise and careful. You just release your hand and enjoy your first dry brushing experience. The ship is going to come alive. And now, my friend, you're going to be hooked. Now, can you see all those rectangular squares and little protruding elements? They haven't been dry brushed. They have been repainted with the same whitish tone, but this time I've used a small brush and painted it with care. So Picasso is making his entry after all. Try your best. In case of shaky hands, try to cut your caffeine intake. If you get the scares, you can always leave it here. Nevertheless, you need to seal your work, and that means that you have to spray it again with varnish. If you're still there, and you are a proper fighter pilot, we'll go for the next step. Step 3. Do not go on if you haven't varnished the ship after step 2. You may lose all your hard work. You see, these ugly lines are the previous work that you need before doing something called paneling, though I joined paneling and what's called a pin wash in a single stroke. Life short, and we want to see it finished. And okay, let's talk about money. We are one step further, and now we are dealing with enamels, and they are a bit more expensive. In this case, I'll be using a black enamel solution and odorless white spirit that you can find in model shops. Though you could skip it and make it cheaper using the same gasoline concoction. Though this time the oil color concentration should be higher. You have to apply the paint carefully, following the panels and lines, and let it dry for about 5 minutes. This picture shows the next move. Paint has been almost removed with a clean brush and white spirit. Slight shadow will remain around the panels, but the painting that seeped inside the lines and crevices hasn't been touched. Same here on this picture, and now it's really starting to look not just cool, but cool. You have to go all over the surfaces, and it's going to take some time, but the results are really satisfying. The process of painting is in itself a soothing experience. It makes you feel good. But as I said before, if you've had enough, you can stop here. Unless you want to experience with metal hues, grime streaks, and real fuel stains. Wanna try? Step 4. Rust or grime streaks can be accomplished with these rather pricey enamels by AK or MIG, but if you prefer, you can get the same result with simple oil paints. In both cases, you have to add that grime, leave it there for a few minutes, and then with a clean brush and white spirit, you have to remove the hard edges. Here I added an additional element called engine oil, which smells and looks like the real thing. These weathering effects can be obtained in scale model shops, but there are always homemade alternatives which are cheaper. Both the oil and rust effect were washed a bit with white spirit. Right now it looks too wet, but when it dries it gets a nice glossy shine. This is a graphite pencil that you can get at any arts shop, and we are giving to our ship the final touches. You can select a few angles and rub the pencil on top of them. You'll get some nice scratch effects. Finally, we reach the metal pigment treatment. I've dabbed graphite pigment around the engine intake and exhaust, and for that I've used an old toothbrush. It's my favorite part because suddenly the spacecraft looks real, and that would be it. However, you do not want to varnish it now, otherwise you'd lose all the metal effects. Just leave it like that. And of course, we are going to need the Look figure. It's the Hasbro Vintage Edition, and it's indeed a really cool figure, but of course it's too clean and we don't want it to look like a toy. Nevertheless, I didn't go crazy with it. I wanted a fast result and weathered with the first step of the process. That is, I use varnish, then gasoline wash, varnish again, and a fast dry brushing touch. Now, if you want something more thorough, I recommend you check this video link by Coen C. I'm posting on top. Coen makes a wonderful work with Hasbro and Bandai models. He really makes them come alive. He uses cool homemade materials and his videos are super detailed. In the description below you'll find some of these Star Wars jewels. So this is it for now. I'm leaving you with a few slides for the final reveal, and in about 4 sessions or 4 days you can do it yourself, so please try it and have fun. Okay, bye bye, cheers.